All right, we're diving into a really powerful argument today, all about the two faces of religion. Is it a source of inner peace and progress, or is it actually a driver of conflict and decay? The idea we're exploring says it can be both, and we're going to break down exactly how. So, at the very heart of this idea is a central question. Is religion a force for inner peace, or is it a weapon for outer conflict? Think of it like a double-edged sword that can either lift humanity up or, plunge it into darkness. Let's start by looking at where the real battle is supposed to be fought. At the heart of this entire discussion is a really crucial distinction, one that kind of reframes the whole idea of what a religious struggle even is. Turns out it's not about fighting other people, but about fighting something much, much closer to home. When most of us hear the word jihad, we probably think of a holy war, an external conflict. But the source material we're looking at points out that within Islamic scripture, its highest, most praised form, what's called the Afzal jihad, is actually an internal battle. It's the struggle against your own ego, your own greed, your own destructive impulses. So why do we so often ignore this internal struggle? Well, the argument is that it's just human nature. I mean, think about it. When we make a mistake, we burn dinner, we mess up at work, it's so much easier to lash out and blame someone else than to just admit we messed up. We project our own flaws outward. And this is exactly where religion can get twisted, from a tool for self-improvement into a weapon against others. Let's see how this plays out in history. We can see a really powerful and, honestly, a tragic historical example of this whole internal versus external fight in the life of one of India's most famous Mughal emperors. So, on the surface, Aurangzeb was the most pious Mughal ruler. He followed religious law to the letter, refused to take a salary from the royal treasury. Get this, he actually wove prayer caps and sold them to pay for his own expenses. And yet, historical accounts tell us he died one of the most miserable, lonely men imaginable. And here's the paradox, right? In the name of external religious purity, Aurangzeb waged wars. He killed thousands of people, including his own brother. He focused his entire life on fighting supposed enemies on the outside, but he never, ever conquered the enemy within. His own ambition, his own cruelty. His external crusade didn't bring him salvation. It led to personal misery, and it was the beginning of the end for his empire. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's ancient history. But this isn't just a story from the distant past. We can see this exact same pattern in a dramatic and much more recent shift that happened in several nations just within the last 50 years. I mean, just look at this timeline. The contrast is pretty shocking. Back in the 1960s, countries like Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan had surprisingly liberal societies. You had female university professors in Kabul. Karachi was a cosmopolitan hub. But then you can see on the timeline a huge shift happened. Religion became externalized. It became a tool for state control, which led to where things are today. And the results of that shift was a massive regression, especially when it came to women's rights. The focus went from inner piety to outer performance, and society just turned inward and became oppressive. This quote, wow, it just captures the tragic outcome perfectly. So why does this pattern keep repeating itself? The idea here is that it's not random at all. It's actually part of a predictable, self-perpetuating cycle of suffering. Okay, here's how the cycle works. A society becomes blindly liberal, but with no inner spiritual grounding, it can become decadent. That creates a huge backlash, which leads to a blindly dogmatic religious structure, but that structure, also lacking any real self-knowledge, becomes oppressive. Its cruelty then sparks another revolution, swinging the society right back to blind liberalism. It's this vicious cycle, and it's fueled by a lack of inner awareness on both sides. So how do you break the loop? The only way out of this destructive cycle is through what's being called true religion. And this isn't about rituals or external rules. It's the hard internal work of self-improvement and understanding. That jihad al-nafs we talked about right at the beginning. So this raises a really fascinating question. Is any society actually managing to break this cycle today? The answer that's presented here is, well, it's deeply counterintuitive and it definitely challenges a lot of conventional thinking. So just take a second and think about it. What country comes to mind? A place that's avoiding this destructive cycle and actually making pragmatic, long-term progress? The answer, it's probably going to surprise you. Yep, China, an officially atheist state. The argument here is that by suppressing what this framework calls popular external religion, the state has paradoxically achieved outcomes that could be considered truly religious in a much deeper sense. And this slide really breaks down the logic behind that surprising claim. See, by aggressively fighting pollution, China is helping nature. By instilling deep focus in education and restricting frivolous entertainment, they're cultivating discipline. The point is, these are practical actions with profound, long-term benefits, benefits that many overtly religious societies are failing to achieve. So this brings us to the final and most crucial distinction in the whole argument. There are essentially two types of religion. First, you have popular religion. This is the easy, outward, performance-based version that's focused on rituals, identity, and that us versus them thinking. And then there's true religion. This is the hard, inward, knowledge-based path of self-conquest. And here it is, the core thesis. That internal, difficult path of true religion is like nectar. It elevates individuals and societies. But the external, easy, popular religion, that's a poison that inevitably leads to division, hatred, and ruin. And this brings us to our final takeaway. This framework isn't just about history or other countries. It's a challenge to all of us to look at our own communities, our own lives, and ask a really tough question. Is the religion we see being practiced the one that makes the headlines? Is it serving as a nectar for humanity, or is it a poison?